It's Diddy time. Diddy. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. So what's going on with this Diddy situation, man? Let's play this little clip while we wait.
Pride here in the U.S. tonight, and Sean Diddy Combs, what federal prosecutors are now saying tonight, what they're accusing Combs of doing from behind bars. Here's ABC's Stephanie Ramos tonight.
Tonight, federal prosecutors accusing Sean Combs of relentless efforts to corrupt witness testimony and subvert his criminal case from behind bars. Almost immediately after arriving at the federal jail in Brooklyn, prosecutors say Combs started using telephone accounts of at least 8 other inmates.
Damn. I wonder, is he paying them? Is it just the influence? Yo, that's Diddy, man. Yo, you got it, Poppy. You know? Or is he offering them? Like, he has a lot of money, right? Resources. Is he putting stuff on their books? You know?
To call people not on his approved contact list. Prosecutors alleging Combs frequently instructs family members and his attorneys to add other individuals via three-way call, which is not allowed. An October call made between Combs and one of his adult sons, prosecutors allege, provides the clear inference that the defendant's goal is to blackmail victims and witnesses either into silence or providing testimony helpful to his defense. And prosecutors say Combs is explicit about his intention to use public statements.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, Hoax. I wish even if we couldn't see it, I wish we could at least hear it. You know, like at least some type of audio. The only thing we have is there's this reporter in the courtroom. He's going to be doing live tweets. And so like last time, I guess I'll just be reading the live tweets and we'll be watching video clips and stuff. But he has the situation going on. There's a bunch of shit going on, but this is one of them where they're saying he's using these inmates' phone numbers or even doing three-way and contacting people
to sway potential jurors, including this Instagram post by his kids.
Happy birthday to Daddy.
Wow.
Prosecutors say Combs enlisted family members to plan and execute a social media campaign around the defendant's birthday. The first time we heard his voice from behind bars.
Thank y'all for being by my side and supporting me.
David Combs has pleaded not guilty to criminal charges. He's being held without bail. His defense team continues to push for his release.
And that's another thing. I think I read one of the articles. There's supposed to be another type of bail hearing apparently this Friday. So, I mean, I guess if that's happening, I'll double check. I guess we'll tune in to see. He's still trying to get out, Let me just check here. Sean Combs on MDC jail raid. Inner City Press covering. Okay. We'll live tweet the thread below. Okay. The other situation that's happening, let's see here. So this is the other thing. We just watched this video about the prosecution saying that he was concealing communications from jail and running social media campaigns to taint the jurors and leak information that could be helpful to the case. They also allege that he has contacted witnesses through third parties, making moves. Now, the defense, let me see if I can find a better article. The defense is pissed off because apparently I guess his jail cell got raided. Let's see, what's the better article for this? Sean Diddy Combs' lawyers claim seizure of writings from cell is outrageous government conduct, and that's supposed to come up today too, I believe. So they said that a raid on his cell in the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn were cited in papers of the government filed in Manhattan federal court on Friday in a bid to keep the music mogul locked up before his May 5th trial. And so that trial, I guess there's not going to be video or audio too. I don't know. I wonder if it's like worth. I don't know. Would it be kind of crazy to just retweets for an entire trial. I don't know. I know a lot of people are interested in the Diddy stuff. An entire trial of just reading? Right? I don't know. So that's May 5th. Tupac. Let me see when it's Tupac again. I forgot. I said it earlier. Tupac trial. They moved it to next year too. Tupac trial. Oh, in March 17. Okay. March 17. So they see some notes. The following included redacted notes found by the Bureau of Prisons investigators during a jail sweep, which prosecutors alleged are evidence Combs paid a witness to post in support of him on Instagram. Damn, he's paying people? That's gotta be wild, though, to accept that money, though. I mean, I guess if you could try to, like, because I got just, like, people that are standing up for him, that I could see, like, some backlash. Oh, you support that, or you're an apologist. But maybe if they put a conspiracy spin on it, maybe they can get away with it. He's paying people. So, Diddy's attorneys did not learn until Friday that his notes were taken from his jail cell, after which they were allegedly given to the U.S. Attorney's Office and then to the trial prosecutors. The rapper's legal team claims prosecutors used this material in a filing to keep Mr. Combs detained. They described it as a targeted seizure and a due process violation. So they asked the judge to schedule an evidentiary hearing through which the government can answer questions about how the search was conducted. So that's part of what's happening today. Let's listen to a little
explain what the basis of this is. Now, in the filing, Sean Combs' defense team, or in the filing that they submitted with the court, Sean Combs' defense team has cited, quote, outrageous government conduct after 19 pages of materials were seized from Sean Combs' jail cell and allegedly were given to the United States Attorney's Office. These materials that were obtained during a jail sweep include Combs' quote, privileged notes to his lawyers concerning defense witnesses and strategies. Combs' attorneys described this sweep as a targeted seizure, that this is a due process violation. They have called for the state to, I should say the federal government, to answer a series of questions that are listed in this filing. So first they want to know who authorized the search of Mr. Combs' sleeping area, personal effects, and paperwork. 2, who determined what paperwork to take. 3rd, who decided to give this paperwork to the United States Attorney's Office. 4, who decided to give this paperwork to trial prosecutors. 5th, who made the decision to not tell Mr. Combs' counsel that the U.S. Attorney was in possession of his notes, including possibly privileged materials. And 6, exactly what material was taken. Now, the government has fired back against this. They believe that this evidentiary hearing is unnecessary, that this sweep wasn't targeted. And one of the things that they have highlighted in their most recent filing is about photographs that were taken of Sean Combs' notebook and his address book that were found in his cell. They write, the photographs and what is depicted in them are not privileged. The defendant doesn't argue, nor could he, that the notes in the photographs were prepared for the purpose of obtaining legal advice. Contrary to defense counsel's mischaracterization, the photographs do not reflect notes to lawyers concerning defense witnesses and defense strategies. Rather, the photographs depict the defendant's wide-ranging notes to himself, including notes related to the defendant's business interests, his release of music, and family matters, among other things. Under the law, these sorts of notes are not protected by the work product doctrine.
Really?
And to be clear, according to the prosecutors, no physical materials were actually seized from Sean Combs, but rather there were just photos that were taken, and as an abundance of caution, they were redacted. These photos were redacted, and then they were provided to the case team for review. So obviously, you're seeing two different sides of the coin here. And ahead of this hearing, Mark Agnifilo, who is Sean Combs' lawyer, one of his lawyers, requested that Sean Combs actually be unshackled today, and for all future hearings, Judge Subramanian actually granted that. Now, reminder, we're not going to see it. There are no cameras that are allowed in this federal courthouse, unfortunately. But As I mentioned, we have our very own Elizabeth Milner, who will be in that courtroom. She's going to come out later, report to us about her observations from what happened inside. We're also going to be providing live updates of what is happening inside that courtroom. And so as we do that, we're also going to be taking your questions. So if you have questions about the case, if you have questions about the hearings, make sure to submit them on our YouTube page. Want to get started right now. I'm not doing this alone. I want to bring on two special guests. I'm joined by criminal defense attorney Mauricio Padilla and also criminal defense attorney Safa Robinson-Ferrer. Great to have you both here. Mauricio, I'll start with you. What do you make of Sean Combs' request here? Or let me put this way. Sean Combs not only requests for a hearing, but the accusations they made against the government.
Well, I mean, I'm glad that he requested a hearing. I've never seen ever this type of, investigation where they're going in and taking pictures of legal pads. I'm not surprised that they're doing it, but in my experience, I've never seen it done. I don't know exactly what the pictures were of, but the fact that it went through a filter team, that they never reached out to, the criminal defense attorneys, it really raises an eyebrow regarding the government's actions and how they're really treating this case. I mean, Diddy must know that they are looking at every single thing. They are listening to every single phone call that he's making. I heard that he's making three-way calls, that he's breaking the rules. But when it comes to Diddy, he can't stop because he won't stop because he can't stop. So I'm not surprised.
Can't stop, won't stop.
I knew you were planning on it.
I had to do it.
You were probably figuring out a way to use that all for this whole show, and you're like, you know what? I'm not going to save it for a half hour, and I'm going to save it for my first answer. So just to provide a little bit more perspective on this, if you've been following us here on Long Crime, you've been following us on Sidebar, you know that the feds actually raided the Metropolitan Detention Center where Sean Combs is currently housed. They were it was a pre-planned sweep. They were looking for contraband, and what the prosecutor said is during the course of this sweep, they looked into Sean Combs' jail cell, and there was an investigator that was part of the Bureau.
By the way, Sean Combs just walked in from the holding cell in the MDC jail 10, walking fine, hugs his lawyers and sits down. Now they're waiting on the judge. I wonder if they're going to grant them the shackle thing to remove it.
Of prisons that was looking into things, and they write in the prosecutors write in their filing, on the defendant's bunk, investigator 1 found the following items: manila folder marked legal, a notebook labeled, and that's actually redacted, an address book, personal effects, and talking about not that they just took out materials and looked at everything, but took photos of it, sent it to a filter team sent it to the prosecutor.
It just
That's
sounds
my
sus to
understanding.
me.
Safa, I'll give you an opportunity to respond to what you think of the defense's argument and the prosecution's response. But I guess the bigger question is, what could happen from this hearing? What's the best case scenario for Sean Combs here?
I mean, the best case scenario for Mr. Combs is that there's some sanctions imposed against the government with respect to the evidence that was allegedly obtained in this case. Those documents, those being suppressed out of the case. And I'm not sure, but we may even be having a conversation about dismissal later down the line. But I don't generally really think that that's going to be the case here. But some sanctions imposed on the prosecution team, removal of those prosecutors as well could be a possibility. So there's a number of things that the judge could determine to do going forward.
So again, as I said, I'm going to provide updates about what's happening in that court. We're also taking your questions. We have a question from V on YouTube. Do we know what was found in the Diddy jail cell sweep? So as I just mentioned, they found this manila folder marked legal, a notebook labeled, and it's actually redacted, an address book, and then personal effects. But as they said, the prosecutors, it was more with respect to business interest and family, and it doesn't seem to be attorney work product or privileged conversations. But we'll see. We'll see what the arguments are in court. We also have an update from court. So Sean Combs just walked in from his holding issue of...
Yeah, we just covered that. And people are asking in the comments on Twitter, asking the same thing. Is he shackled? Is he shackled? Yeah, I wasn't sure if he was granted the shackles or not, or that was a request that was put in and it's pending. I don't know.
Phone calls. He is taking other inmates' phone privileges to contact people that are not on his contact list. That he is devising this scheme to use third parties to reach out to witnesses in the case. There was also this allegation that he is orchestrating a social media campaign, not just to help his public image, but to potentially taint a future jury pool by, his son took over his Instagram and has been posting positive videos of his father. But then they also, as we know, as we reported on Sidebar, the show that I host, that he actually orchestrated this happy birthday message with him and his family. They're literally wishing him a happy birthday. You hear him on the other end. He's speaking from jail. So that seems to be the trickier conversation. We weren't planning for this hearing, but what are your thoughts on the idea of Sean Combs getting let out of jail?
I doubt it's going to happen. He's not helping himself. This is not
Legendary.
Diddy,
What's up, man?
Diddy runs the city like he did before. This is, you're in prison, you're in jail, federally indicted. You had a couple machine guns with altered serial numbers at your house, like a real gangster. When a judge is thinking about whether or not he's going to let you out, he's going to take everything into consideration, including the actions that you're taking right now. I think that someone like him doesn't really understand how close they're looking. I mean, they're literally taking pictures of his legal pads. That's crazy. So they're going to listen to every single thing that you say to every single person, and then get ready for the jailhouse snitches. That's going to happen here for sure. There's going to be the guy that says that he was drinking jailhouse wine and spontaneously blurted out,
he was twerking.
That's every single high-profile case.
He was putting out twerking,
I totally
backing
think
it up.
that's going to happen. I don't think that he's going to get a
Diddy
bond
parties in the
because
cell?
nothing's changed. So for a judge to, go back on his ruling, especially with a guy like him, he gets out and he starts making mistakes and does something bad, the judge is going to look bad.
Yeah, by the way, the standard is much lower. We're not talking about did he have three-way phone calls and obstruct justice to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. It's just the standard of did he meet to get pretrial release, to get bail, and it doesn't seem, unless they can put forward a really compelling argument by the defense, that he's going to be able to justify that if these allegations are taken as true by the court. Okay, some questions. Question from Andy on X. Is he shackled? No, he is not shackled because the defense won that motion to have him unshackled for this proceeding and maybe presumably for future proceedings. Here's a question for you, Safa. This is a question from Erica Potter Childs on YouTube. How does an inmate have personal space rights? Now the attorney-client privilege, I understand, but anything else is fair game in jail. So I guess the question would be, what is a criminal defendant's Fourth Amendment rights in jail against unreasonable search and seizures?
Well, those Fourth Amendment rights to search and seizure are certainly limited when a person is incarcerated. But the thing is this, at the end of the day, Mr. Combs, he's facing these accusations. He has an attorney. He is always protected by that attorney-client privilege. The search and seizure rights don't supersede his ability to have that attorney-client privilege that's been granted to him by the Constitution. So there's a fine line here. Not only that, but if you've got an allegation that the government is going in doing this prison sweep, generally speaking, those things are done to prevent contraband and other things to have been found or to be in possession of those things, or to prevent individuals from being in possession of those things. That doesn't appear to be the case here. Legal documents, legal pads, notebooks don't appear to be contraband. They're not drugs. They're not going to harm anybody. So that's a very fine line in question between whether or not, those rights have been violated and so on and so forth.
And by the way, the government addressed that in their filing. They said, although pretrial detainees like the defendant retain some Fourth Amendment protections, that does not mean that those rights are not subject to restrictions and limitations. Even when a prison regulation impinges on inmates' constitutional rights, that regulation is valid if it's reasonably related to legitimate peniological interests, meaning about the prison safety and things like that. Although pretrial detainees may have some residual privacy interests that are protected by the Fourth Amendment, courts must weigh those interests against the requirements of preservation of institutional security and order, meaning got to weigh that against what's happening in the prison.
So they're still waiting on the judge. I was wondering, because if Diddy, I don't know, how is he supposed to take notes and record stuff and prepare? I guess he can't while he's in jail. Only if he meets up with his attorney. Because if I have all the time in the world that I'm locked up, I'm probably gonna plan my strategy and stuff while I'm there taking notes and stuff. But now you can't even do that because they're gonna raid and hand your notes over to the prosecution, take pictures, and I guess you have to trust through their filter team that anything that they shouldn't be looking at, they just redacted it, and they're not gonna have access to that.
He's P. Diddy. He's famous. I'm sure I read an article that people are competing to make his bed and things of that nature. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm pretty sure people are tripping over themselves to assist him because they figure out maybe, he can give me money, or he can, he can produce my next album for the inmates that wish to be rappers, which I'm sure there's a bunch in there. But listen, regarding Fourth Amendment, I mean, when you're locked up, that's somewhere where they do routine cavity searches. So I don't understand what people think that they have privacy rights when you're incarcerated, when they could literally give you a cavity search. It doesn't get more intrusive than that.
Daddy,
so I always counsel my clients expect
I like that.
Zero privacy.
Cavity search.
They will listen to everything. They will look through everything. They will read everything. And the higher profile the case, the more they're going to care. And this is, I just don't understand. Like, if it's a balancing test with the prosecution, what did you get out of this? And is it worth the bad press? Because this is bad press for the prosecution. I mean, I don't think it spins well for them that they're going through all this and taking pictures of legal pads and things of that nature. In my opinion, it doesn't look good for the prosecution.
Before I go to you, Safa, on an interesting legal question, Mauricio, I have arguably the most important question that we have. This is for you. It's about the wine in the jail. How do inmates make wine in jail, Mauricio? That seems to be the question that is dominating our YouTube.
They get like fruit or anything. They stick it in a bag with water and then they put it somewhere and let it ferment. Yeah. And then eventually that's how you get the jailhouse hooch or whatever they call it. And they drink it and it gets you wasted. It's popular. And it always goes in conjunction with the jailhouse snitch. The jailhouse snitch always says he was drunk on wine when he spontaneously blurted out, "I did it."
It's Food Network.
I watched this one video where these people in some type of jail or prison, they made some of that punch or whatever, but somebody put potato in there, and something, I guess the potato was like really old, and I forgot what, is it botulism or something? Some people got really sick. I don't remember if they died or not. Some people got really, really, really sick off of that.
Efforts to be released on bail. The notes refer to defense counsel by name, include discussions of defense experts and witnesses, discuss cross-examination and credibility of witnesses, and overall defense strategy. Mr. Combs' handwritten notes covering legal strategy are now in the hands of the trial prosecutors, who hope to take advantage of the breach they committed to better prepare for the May 2025 trial, bring new charges, and argue for Mr. Combs' detention. And then they go on a little bit later to say if the warning legal on that manila folder wasn't enough, the notes are obviously legal materials that he discusses with his lawyer. They repeatedly refer to his lawyers by name. On the 14th, and then a lot of this is actually redacted, but they said that this is clear wrongdoing. The notes are replete with discussions of legal strategy. They all should have been obvious to everyone who looked at these notes, including Investigator 1, who was that investigator from the Bureau of Prisons, and the taint team and the trial team. How does the prosecution argue against?
So with that potato story, 8 men came down with botulism and they were hospitalized, and the inmates drank from the same batch of Pruno. Oh, that's what you guys were talking about in the chat, Pruno. So, yeah, it was pretty bad. 3 men had to be put on ventilators. Damn.
That's number one. Number two, then we have to go to the point of once somebody is taking photos of this, it's clearly legal material. It's clearly work product. How do we get around, saying that this is okay? And I think that's really a better question for the defense. I hate when prosecutors try to say, well, that's not privileged or that's not Brady material, when in fact it's up to the defense and the defendant to decide what's Brady material and what's important to us, because we are the ones that are crafting and framing our defense. They're not in any better position to tell us what that is. So it's going to be interesting to see how they get around this. Of course, the argument that it's not confidential, it's privileged, maybe they will disclose or say that some of this information had initially been disclosed in their disclosures, but it'll be interesting to see where they go.
Little update from court. So Sean Combs' lawyer, Mark Agnifilo, he said this to the court, we expect Alexandra Shapiro to arrive at any moment from the Second Circuit. This is another one of Sean Combs' lawyers. I have Sean Love Combs to my left. The judge said, fine. What are you seeking? Agnifilo, we want to know how his notes with lawyers came into their possession. Yeah. We're going to continue to update. Exactly. We're going to continue to take your questions on this. One question I have, Mauricio, is how much can the prosecution rely on, well, look, this was the Bureau of Prisons who did this. It wasn't us. And also went through a filter team, and there's something in their filing that I want to read you too, where they say, even if there was inadvertent disclosure of privileged material to the prosecution team, that alone does not suggest that a defendant's constitutional rights were violated or that a defendant is entitled to relief. And they cite a case that says this after-the-fact notice of potentially privileged documents did not render the government's earlier search unreasonable. The government's review need only be reasonable, not perfect.
Listen, if you have DOJ pointing the finger at the Bureau of Prisons and the Bureau of Prisons pointing the finger at the DOJ, that's like a disaster. Like, I don't even understand, what they.
I did miss some updates. So yeah, Sean Combs' lawyer, Agnifilo, we expect Alexandria Shapiro to arrive at any moment. And the judge said, fine, what are you seeking? We want to know how his notes with the lawyer came into possession. Combs' lawyer, Agnifilo, has an expectation of privacy in his legal notes. The judge said this occurred during BOP, Bureau of Prisons, sweep of the jail. But you're saying it was a pretext. Agnifilo says yes, 19 pages of notes were given from the taint team to them. Combs' lawyer Agnifilo says, we know enough to make out a constitutional violation, but we need to know more detail about the failures. We haven't been able to test their explanation. We need the surveillance video of the search. Oh, okay.
We're given from the taint team
Tinkle Tits, what's up?
Mark Agnifilo says, we know enough to make out a constitutional.
Okay, we just read that. Thank you for the 14 months, man. Appreciate that. I hope you're doing well. And all the craziness that's happening everywhere. I don't think cameras going to be allowed. No. Hey, Marianne, how you doing? So they want surveillance. They want to know how they feel like these legal notes shouldn't have been taken. He also goes on to say, now, new update, Agnifilo, we need the communications of Investigator 1. We need to know the role of the U.S. Attorney's Office on what should be photographs. The search was for drugs and guns and cell phones, but these are Mr. Combs' legal notes, or files, I should say. Sorry, legal files.
Mr. Combs being taken into custody, everybody knows that Mr. Combs has been under investigation since last year. And I would highly anticipate that the government knew that at some point he would be coming into custody later this year or at this point in time now. So I would continue to challenge that. At what point when was that search determined that it was going to take place, or when was it scheduled? And then to your second point, the expectation and things of that nature, again, it's going to be really interesting here, how much they think that they can get around that. So.
No, let's talk about that. And by the way, another quick question. This is a question from Tony on YouTube. Is Bond going to be discussed today? I don't believe so. I think that's still set for Friday. But going back to, this is the filing from Sean Combs' legal counsel. Mauricio, they write, the Bureau of Prisons sweep was purportedly related to removing contraband at the facility. And by the way, this was reported that they found homemade weapons, they found electronics, they found, drugs. This was all not about Sean Combs, this is about other inmates. But it says, yet Investigator 1 apparently used this sweep as a pretext to conduct a targeted seizure of Mr. Combs' handwritten notes about conversations with his lawyers. Tellingly, Investigator 1 did not report that he had identified and confiscated Sean Combs' notes of conversations with his lawyer to supervisors of the multi-agency law enforcement operation. He went straight to the prosecution team. What do you make of that, Mauricio?
If you work for the BOP and you're doing a sweep looking for contraband and cell phones, and all of a sudden you're taking pictures of a legal pad, the people that work with you are going to be like, hey, what are you doing? That's completely targeted. That goes against how they operate. These sweeps are done. They're voluminous. It's work for them, and they got to get it done. For you to take the time to stop and start taking pictures of legal pads and going through his things. And then in addition to that, now Investigator 1 is taking the material that he photographed, where it's not even the norm to do so, to the prosecution, is clearly indicative that it was a target and that Investigator 1 had an agenda. He went in there to take pictures, and it's obvious. I mean, if he wants to argue that he was part of a team and he was looking for contraband, so then why did you stop and take all this time to do this in-depth search of Diddy's legal pads and legal materials? Doesn't make sense.
I'm curious to see the prosecution's response, but right now it's still based on the defense counsel's argument to the court. And to give everybody an update about what's happening in that court, and Safa, I'll throw this to you for your reaction about what's happening. So Mark Agnifilo, again, Sean Combs' lawyer, we need the communications of Investigator 1. We need to know the role of the U.S. Attorney's Office on what should be in photographs. The search was for drugs and guns and cell phones, but these are Combs' legal files. And then the judge said, just keep it on the logistics. Mark Agnifilo says, we're not sure if it was Investigator 1 who was the one doing the search, who interviewed Mr. Combs, who went to the area where his legal papers were. Once we know that, we could have a Fifth Amendment transgression. Safa.
Absolutely. You know, right now what the defense is doing is they're trying to get a hold and a grasp of exactly who launched this investigation, why these photos were taken, why this correspondence happened between Investigator 1 and the U.S. Attorney's Office. And a lot of these questions remain to be foreseen until we have a hearing on the issue. And right now, the defense is seeking a hearing on that issue. So we haven't gotten to that specific hearing as of yet, although they're laying the framework for why that should be taking place. And they're very valid questions. Anything that is created with
the other thing they said after that about the whole Fifth Amendment and who interviewed Mr. Combs and, you know, where his legal papers were, we could have a Fifth Amendment transgression. After that, it says the Combs' lawyer, Agnifilo, we may ask for dismissal of the indictment or for the recusal of the prosecution team. The judge says they used 2 portions in responding on bail, ? And you want me not to consider those? Agnifilo says they need to hand over those notes.
I have quite an update from court, and Mauricio, I'm going to ask you your response. Sean Combs' lawyer says, we may ask for dismissal of the indictment or for the recusal of the prosecution team. Judge Subramanian writes, Subramanian said, they used 2 portions in responding on bail, and you want me not to consider those? They need to hand over the notes. Wow. So would there be a scenario where Sean Combs' indictment could be thrown out or the prosecution team has to recuse themselves? Assuming the worst, assuming this is a violation of Sean Combs' constitutional rights. What do you think?
I mean, listen, the defense is always going to ask for the star, the moons, and everything. That's not going to happen. They're not going to dismiss anything, and they're not going to. They're probably not going to, you know, kick the prosecutors off. But that's the correct thing to ask for. You know what I mean? Like, there's other sanctions that are not as drastic. This could end up with, you know, the judge giving the prosecution a lecture, telling them don't do it again. You know, or which probably is going to end up, you know, I don't see the judge in this case doing something as drastic as what the defense is asking for, but he may do something. He may, you know, give him a talking to.
And by the way, Safa, we have to be clear that this is not the first time Sean Combs' defense counsel has raised allegations of misconduct by the government. There was a whole series of back and forth and motions that the government, more specifically the Department of Homeland Security, had been leaking information to the media. They talked about leaking the 2016 videotape of Sean Combs purportedly beating Cassandra Ventura in that hotel hallway. They said that law enforcement agents were making inappropriate comments to the media. And the judge actually instituted a gag order, even made a comment, Judge Subramanian, that if it's true some of these comments were being made, it's totally improper. Now, here's an update, too, because Mark Agnifilo told the court, we don't know what the team has. We want to know, and we want the material back while this is pending. We cannot waive his attorney-client privilege. We have to be direct or aggressive. So it just seems, and by the way, so it seems to me, Safa, the fact that this hearing is happening, the judge is at least open to what the defense is saying.
Absolutely. And the judge should be, you know, all of these things are issues that could ultimately come back on appeal. So it's best to have a thorough, you know, hearing on the issue, making sure that everybody's crossing their T's and dotting their I's so that we don't have issues for appeal. And that could be an issue if the defense doesn't raise it. And then it could ultimately lead to ineffective assistance of counsel. I think the defense team is being very thorough right now. I think they are being ambitious, but definitely very thorough right now with addressing each and every point that they need to address to ensure that Mr. Combs gets a fair trial to the best of their ability.
By the way, we're showing everybody these courtroom sketches. You'll see there's multiple judges because this case has been in front of multiple judges before. It's now in front of Judge Arun Subramanian. By the way, we're taking your questions, not just about the hearing. If you have questions
So the judge says to the government, what happened here? Why were they taking photos of Mr. Combs's notebooks? And the government prosecution replies, none of the prosecutors had contact with them. Judge says, but Investigator 1 was monitoring Mr. Combs's communications and in and out was monitoring the communications. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's a little sus. The judge says, is this a Fourth Amendment violation? Prosecution says the BOP investigator works for the Bureau of Prisons. He is focused on safety, and if the defendant is in compliance with BOP rules, he was not. It is true that BOP gave us the info. So what was he not in compliance of then?
Serial numbers out of your house. I'm pretty sure that your hard drives are chock full of bad information and videos and pictures. So I'm sure that they got a lot to deal with, but I'm pretty sure if they gave them a date in May of 2025, that they're probably going to be ready to go.
We have some updates from court. We now have the prosecution's response to what's been happening. Safa, so the Judge Subramanian, by the way, this is a live look outside that courthouse. No cameras allowed in the courtroom, but we're doing our best to update you about what's happening. So the judge says to the government, what happened here? Why were they taking photos of Mr. Combs' notebooks? AUSA Mary Christine Slavic says none of the prosecutors had contact with them. The judge said, but Investigator 1 was monitoring Mr. Combs' communications in and out. The judge said, is this a Fourth Amendment violation? AUSA Slavic, so again, this is the prosecutor. The BOP investigator works for the BOP, the Bureau of Prisons. He's focused on safety, and if the defendant is in compliance with BOP rules, he was not. If it is true that BOP gave us the info, what do you make of that back and forth, Safa?
You know, it doesn't really answer the question, in my opinion. And here's the thing. The Bureau of Prisons, the federal government, the U.S. Attorney's Office, Department of Homeland Security, and FBI, they are all law enforcement. They are all the government. The prosecution teams are imputed with knowing and being in possession of things that law enforcement is in possession of. And I know there's a question here with respect to the Bureau of Prisons, but it definitely does possibly raise that Fourth Amendment issue because, again, why are we taking photos of these documents? Why is Investigator 1 targeted with monitoring Mr. Combs' phone calls? Now, generally speaking, every inmate's phone calls, they're monitored. There are searches that are conducted all of the time. But this seems to be a little heightened, specifically because you're taking photos of paper. Paper doesn't appear to be a threat to the physical safety of any inmate in the jail. Not only that, but it seems that there's more attention that's paid to Mr. Combs as things continue to progress. And it's very common that the prosecution team will monitor or will have those phone calls pulled. But here there seems to be just a number of things. And based on the totality of the circumstances, there's a significant red flag that's going off.
Okay, Mauricio, I'm going to go to you with a new update from court. So the prosecutor says none of the prosecution team were aware that Investigator 1 was going to be part of this suite. The judge said, when did you become aware that photos had been taken of Mr. Combs' notes? Prosecutor responds, after the suite. The judge said, but before the grand jury subpoena? Now, the reason that is interesting, and I believe what they're talking about, is if you go back to the government's filing, they said as part of that investigation, the government has sent grand jury subpoenas and document requests to the Bureau of Prisons for the defendant's monitored communications, including calls and emails. And then it says, from those materials, the government has learned that the defendant has persisted in engaging in obstructive conduct since he entered BOP custody. We talked about that before. Mauricio, your reaction?
So they're basically saying that they're subpoenaing documents, but they're sending their investigator to get what they subpoenaed because they don't want to wait for the subpoena. Listen, it's making them look ridiculous. The longer that we talk in this particular broadcast, the worse it's going for them. What you just said really makes them look bad. You guys didn't even know where Investigator 1 was, but then again, you took what Investigator 1 gave.
Yeah, I kind of have a I think it's a little bit bullshit that they weren't. It says none of the prosecution team were aware that Investigator 1 was going to be part of the sweep. Come on. And then the judge says, when did you become aware of the photos that had been taken of Mr. Combs' notes after the sweep? Because, like, what danger and threat is that? Like, should there be, like somebody else said, searching for guns, weapons, alcohol, like, you know, whatever, pooch? Why did they have to seize notes and take pictures and then hand it over? So the judge said, so there's nothing else. Prosecution says Mr. Agnifilo says the defense team does not know what the team has, but we made a production to them last night of everything, not just the 19 pages that were passed to them.
From court. The judge said to the prosecution, so there's nothing else?
Right.
The AUSA Slavic, the prosecutor said.
And there's a new update too just now. The prosecution says these materials were obtained as part of the government's covert ongoing grand jury investigation. The judge then says, is it standard protocol to photograph notebooks rather than take them so it could be known that they were taken? That's a really good question. And it just says, I don't know. I want to see what they have to say about that.
Today, but this should have been done long ago. Not only that, but I think at this point, what's important is to get Investigator 1 into that courtroom, put Investigator 1 on the stand to make a determination as to how he was directed to get these documents, who he spoke to, how he came to the decision to photograph those documents, and so on and so forth. So I really think that's where we are, is having Investigator 1 come on the stand. That's going to be the answer to all of our questions.
I have a question from Susan LeBlanc on YouTube. So no cameras through the whole court process? Unfortunately, no. We do not allow cameras in federal court, New York federal court. I could talk forever about how I think that's a mistake. I think there should be cameras in the Supreme Court as part of transparency. I think it's better for the public to see it. We get to see the evidence ourselves. No more rumors, no more speculation. It's a good thing to see the judicial process play out, but unfortunately, I am just a host on Law and Crime. I am not the chief judge anywhere yet. We'll see where this goes. Anyway, we got an update from court. Prosecutor says, these materials were obtained as part of the government's covert ongoing grand jury investigation. The judge responded, is it standard procedure to photograph notebooks rather than take them so it could be known they were taken? Prosecutor said, I don't know. Who wants to answer that one?
Just a really shoddy investigation. Again, and to Mr. Padilla's point earlier, is if you issued grand jury subpoenas, then why do you have to have Investigator 1 go in and photograph specifically what you seem to be looking for? It doesn't make sense. It's really shoddy. It's really fast and loose. I don't know what the prosecution team is doing on this.
Let me ask you this, Mauricio. Let's say, for example, you tell me, could this affect what the government said they found in terms of obstruction? You know, we have the phone calls, we have these third-party calls, we know what Sean Combs has been doing behind jail, and this is further evidence of obstruction. He shouldn't be allowed in. Is there anything that could happen today that could affect his chances of bail on Friday?
I don't think so. I think they're completely separate. One thing is whether or not he's a flight risk. One thing is whether he's a threat to the community, as a whole, and the other thing is the prosecutorial misconduct that they're engaging. I don't understand how you say it's a covert grand jury investigation, but you started off saying that it was a random sweeps. Like, which is it? It can't be both.
Well, they could say it said we were continually investigating what he was doing behind prison. And look, this sweep happened. We didn't order the sweep. They ordered the sweep, and it just so happens during the course of the sweep, bada boom, this came up.
Right. So the covert investigation was Investigator 1 in with everybody else that was conducting the random sweep, and then went straight to Diddy's cell to photograph. So that's targeted. That's the definition of targeted.
I want to read.
In my opinion.
That's fair. That's fair. The judge might see it that way. So this is an update from court. The prosecutor said, we are not required to notify the defense of our ongoing investigation of criminal conduct. We receive these materials in an appropriate channel. Whenever we get new information, if there's reason to believe there's privilege, it goes to the filter team. Safa, walk me through that. If it goes through the filter team, is everything okay?
Absolutely not. Because who determines what's appropriate with the filter team? You're asking the government and the police or law enforcement to police themselves. There's no outside check and balance, from a defense or from any other administrative board to say, yes, provide us with that documentation. We, as an outside, source or organization or agency, will then determine if it's appropriate, if it's confidential and privileged or anything like that. So essentially, it's the government trying to police themselves and cover up, make something.
And they just did another update too. So the judge said if they were verbatim notes of his meetings with his lawyers, how would you know without asking the defense? And the prosecution says, our filter team does a serious job. This investigation was covert. We had a lot of information before charges were brought. Oh, no, man. Okay, another update. Prosecution says, I understand there is a dialogue between the defense and the filter team. I'm not part of that. Interesting. I didn't know that. The judge said, I don't understand that dividing line between the covert investigation and discovery in this case, given that the defendant has been charged. I don't know. I think that is a little weird. Kind of like if it's like a legal note thing. And it's like, I mean, Diddy's in trouble anyway for the supposed allegations. I wonder if, I guess they're going to get to that today. The allegations about him making calls on like using other people's contacts to make calls outside of jail and three-way calls and stuff.
Approach is eminently reasonable. Here, where the photographs related to the government's ongoing covert grand jury investigation, the government had no...
Whether or not it's confidential privilege or attorney-client privilege. Again, expecting the Bureau of Prisons or the government to police themselves. And there's a question there because it doesn't appear that any defense attorney has the ability to say, yes, this is attorney-client privilege, or even the judiciary or anything like that. So that's a significant question. It also brings to mind, and for example, when we have wiretap cases, and there's been a wiretap on a phone for maybe a year to 2 years, and they've been listening to our clients. But then when the client calls us as their defense attorney, the police themselves determine, oh, this is attorney-client privilege. Let me turn it down for 30 seconds, then pop back on to see if they're still talking to their attorney, and then let me hang up. So again, it's just really odd, really.
So another update, the prosecution says, our grand jury investigation is ongoing into the conduct that has not currently been charged. We have multiple ways to get information that are not obvious to the defendant. We're not obliged to inform them. They have no authority for that. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Why would they go on faith with a high-profile criminal? Like, meaning justifying taking pictures and looking at it? Listen, at the end of the day, what did they think that they were going to get?
Use the restroom
Information regarding obstruction, or it seems to me that they already have them busted doing a bunch of incorrect things, including three-way calls, including trying to activate social media to affect the jury pool. Like, if you got them cold busted on certain things, don't muddy the waters and do this ridiculousness, because what are you going to have? You're going to have a day like today where you're in court trying to explain your tomfoolery to a federal judge, and it's not paying off dividends for them.
So we are providing updates from court. I have a few more that we want to talk about. Safa, so apparently the prosecutor said, I understand there's a dialogue between the defense and the filter team. I'm not part of that. The judge says, I don't understand that dividing line between the covert investigation and discovery in this case, given that the defendant has been charged. The prosecutor also said, our grand jury investigation is ongoing into conduct that has not currently been charged. We have multiple ways to get information that are not obvious to the defendant. We are not obliged to inform them. They have no authority for that. Safa.
Here's the thing. They can have an ongoing investigation all they want to, but Mr. Combs has already been indicted, and post-indictment now, and as we head through the stages of the proceeding, there are documents that they are generating themselves that could be discovery and are required to be disclosed. They also are what we in the law call Brady material, could possibly be exculpatory in nature, or are things that the defense team is going to want to investigate themselves.
Meaning evidence that would show he's not guilty.
Correct. And Brady versus Maryland, it's one of our big cases in the legal world. And so essentially what the government is doing is continuing to now make discovery, in my opinion, as the case is progressing. You know, they may be considering other charges, maybe witness tampering or whatever they determine to do, and that's fine. But again, they have muddied the waters, to use your words. And here we are now where they've created additional discovery, additional things that are required to be disclosed, but they want to keep it close to their chest. It's not okay.
Okay, well, you tell me if this is okay, Mauricio. The judge said, I want to be cautious since some of this is sealed, but is any of this privileged? And the prosecutor said, the notebook was labeled things to do, not attorney-client. They suggest they were meant to be in the folder marked legal, but self-labeling is not enough.
Things to do when you're indicted and sitting in jail it's pretty assumes that things to do have to do with your case. I mean, that's pretty much
fair?
the main.
Is that fair? Maybe it's, I don't know, do 1,000 crunches today. Make sure to call mom. I don't know.
Yeah, but I'm sure that in that notebook, things to do, and you have this looming indictment, is going to include some things that have to do with your legal defense. You know, and it's not okay to just go in there and start photographing things and trying to get an upper hand. At the end of the day, I mean, they have a pretty strong case. I don't understand from my perspective. And this whole thing smells like a superseding indictment. People like his son, the feds love to indict your relatives. So if they got Diddy's son doing inappropriate things, that for them is, they love it, because nothing is worse when you're sitting in prison than all of a sudden they indict your son or a relative or a close friend.
I mean, there was an allegation put forward in the most recent bail application, the bail motion by the government, Safa, where they basically say Sean Combs is having his family doing his bidding for him. So if it's clear there's a grand jury investigation going on. It seems more likely than not there could be more charges leveled against Sean Combs, but possibly others, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the way that the government is trying to, of course, frame it. I think one of the important things here and what everybody is kind of on edge about is the possibility of witness tampering. And so whether it's Mr. Combs or anybody that's close to him, including his family and his children, really have to be mindful of what they are putting forth to the public, who they're speaking and communicating to, and things of that nature to avoid any subsequent charges that could come about. That's one thing. The other thing I'm going to say is, and I think that the government alleged in the bail application or in the opposition that Mr. Combs' son was using social media to allegedly taint the jury. And one of the things we have to remember is that although a defendant's been charged and they're incarcerated, it doesn't stop the real world and life from going on. If a family wants to celebrate their birthday or their loved one's birthday, they should be able to do that. Mr. Combs, of course, is a high-profile individual who's got tons of followers on social media, and there are people that still do, believe in him and enjoy his music and all of those sorts of things. And so what I'm plainly saying is that Mr. Combs shouldn't be robbed of the ability, or his family shouldn't be robbed of the ability to celebrate him in whatever way they see fit.
I always found that to be a little bit of a stretch, that argument. Well, he's posting, birthday videos. His son has taken over his Instagram and is posting messages about, posts about his
mafia,
his rap career and music videos. I think that in of itself might be a little tenuous to say, oh, that's going to influence a future jury.
All right. So the judge, they might have said this already because I stepped away, but the judge said, I want to be cautious since some of this is sealed. But is any of this privileged? Prosecution says the notebook was labeled things to do, not attorney-client. They suggest that they were meant to be in the folder marked. Okay, they suggest they were meant to be in the folder marked legal, but self-labeling is not enough. The prosecution also said these include action items for non-lawyers. That's not privileged. They're information about family members' birthdays, also not privileged. We point to the Lumiere decision by Judge Rakoff. We're happy to engage with the defense. We're happy to go back and forth. Oh, no problem. Another update. How about agreeing that I should not consider these two excerpts in your opposition to the bail motion? Prosecution said, I think that's right for the bail argument scheduled Friday. Judge says, what about putting them in a vault? They are inspirational messages.
What are they talking about?
I mean, it seems to me that they're talking about whether or not the actual information is privileged or not. They cite case law. Mm-hmm. The problem is that most people, including lawyers that do this for a living, have never seen this type of behavior. Like, they're going out on a limb. for everybody, the legal community, the community at large, and the public is looking at them saying, really, guys, you guys are in there photographing, his manila envelope that says legal on it. You're going through his legal pads. So the prosecution can cite whatever case they want. At the end of the day, the public is going to think whatever they want. And as of right now, it looks like if they're really, trying to find evidence that they need, it makes them look like needy. Which I don't even think that they are needy. I think they have plenty of evidence, but they're greedy. They want more. They always want more. And I've always predicted that at some point, I know Diddy's was active in politically. I think they're going to go after some of his political friends.
I don't know. That's always the next game. Who are they going to go after next? I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. But I tell you what, talking about looking ahead, there's a mention of the bail argument on Friday. So latest update from court right now. The judge said, how about agreeing that I should not consider these two excerpts in your opposition to the bail motion? And the prosecutor says, I think that's right for the bail argument scheduled for Friday. The judge said, what about putting them in a vault? They are inspirational messages. Kind of hard to talk about what they're referring to, but it seems to me at the very least, Safa, that there might be parts of the bail motion that I mentioned that the prosecution can no longer argue for Friday, maybe?
Yeah, so I think there's an allegation that's been made by the defense here that whatever information had been obtained by the Bureau of Prisons and was ultimately turned over to the U.S. Attorney's Office was used at some point during some bail application. Which one, I don't know. So I think what the judge is essentially saying here is in preparation for tomorrow's bail application, which they possibly have filed their papers in advance of that, request in opposition and the prosecution's opposition to the defense bail application, that some of the information that was obtained through the search and was used in that application will be kept out or stricken. So the judge will basically instruct himself, well, I'm not going to consider these things. We're going to act as if they don't exist.
Maybe it's about that whole section about the birthday messages. Maybe the judge is saying you can't use that stuff anymore in support of your opposition to bail. I'll tell you what, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we have a lot more to talk about. I think I have to sign off my guests. I have to sign up my guests. It was great having both criminal defense attorneys, Safa Robinson-Ferrer and Mauricio Padilla. You guys are fantastic, but both criminal defense attorneys, I saw a little bias here. But it's okay. You both were terrific. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back right after.
Okay, we're taking a break. All right, so let's see what else, where we left off at. Okay, another update. Prosecution says these are related to our ongoing investigation. There is no reason to put the notes in a vault. As a matter of procedure, the defendant would have to make a motion. These notes are not attorney-client privileged. We're not backing down. Another update. The prosecution says, then there's work product, which broader, it's meant to protect the attorney's mental process, but these are not that. It's about an administrative question. Follow-up with a paralegal is not protected. Following up with a paralegal is not protected. Okay. Then there's work product, which broader, it's meant to protect the attorney's mental process, but these are not. It's about an administrative question. Following up with a paralegal is not protected. Okay. What else we got? So they're saying too, I see a couple people mentioned in the chat, and I've seen this going around online, that Diddy allegedly had sent some private investigators to people's houses. So this person, Amala, she's been deep covering Diddy. Pause. And they said she said she had
2 private investigators just visited a place I used to live in search of me, and they were coming to ask me whether or not I've been paid to talk about P. Diddy and his connection to other celebrities on my show. Now, luckily, the person I used to live with called me on the phone so I could talk to these guys. They did not immediately disclose that they were private investigators. I had to coax that out of them through being quite hostile to them throughout the conversation. But they kept bringing up my content that I made in regard to P. Diddy and his connection to other celebrities. They would not say who they were working for and who had hired them to come and travel around to these different influencers. But they did say that they would be going to multiple influencers who are talking about these stories to figure out whether or not they're being paid by a specific entity to share them. Now, I am definitely not paid to talk about what I talk about on my channel, but they said not only would they pay me to disclose who I was being paid by, but they would pay me more than whatever I was getting to share the opposite story. I don't know who these guys were. I don't even know if they were telling the truth, but they did say there were 10 other influencers that they were going to be visiting. So I'm putting this out there in case this happens to anybody else. And I will be going more in depth as to what happened on my show today in case you want any further information. But this is very, very strange.
Oh. I thought there was a video of it too. Here.
Who have come to my... So you guys are private investigators who have come to my private home asking about influencers? This is very uncomfortable, you guys.
Oh, so they showed up at somebody else's house too? Who's this? We found the private investigators. Here they're questioning another content creator. Yo, they really rolling around like that? Yo, what?
Guys.
I don't know why. I'll explain.
No, you're at my home.
Okay, so you don't want to talk to us then?
Have I broken some law?
Absolutely not.
And you have the thin blue... This is frightening. I think... Can you guys step away from my home?
Well, we're in a public street, so the answer is no.
Oh, shit.
I'm really not trying to give you a hard time.
Why are you here? What do you mean? You're showing up at my house.
We're very nice and respectful, and we will be. I just have two quick questions for you, and if you want to be interested in it, great. If not, I'll have a nice day. We're not...
What is this? This is odd.
So...
You have to admit this is very weird.
It always is, and people always ask us the same questions. I'm happy to explain to you. So
What?
Very simply, we were just hired to speak to a few people that do, have a lot of followers and stuff like that on different platforms.
What, is this about the Diddy stuff I report on?
Somewhat, yes. Not necessarily Diddy stuff, but people are involved in just stuff like that. So basically, a very simple question is are you paid to influence that's stories like that in any direction?
No, not at all.
That's all we wanted to know. Because if the company is, they're looking into people who are...
Are you guys going to pay me for this visit? Like, this is frightening.
So,
like, I'm honestly...
So what are they saying? Are these Diddy's people going out to collect information, or is this the government going out to collect it?
I'm super... You have to admit, if I came to your house, and, like, I thought this was a joke. I thought I have a friend coming over business right now. Like, this is extremely weird for me. I have 100,000 followers. I'm not making any money.
That's one of the reasons why we're here, and that's the question that we're asking. If someone contacts you, say, in the last 6 months and is paying you to influence in a certain way.
No.
Either one way.
Is it illegal if somebody would have?
So the answer is no.
Okay, I wish somebody would have. I'd love to be making real money off this.
Let me talk for 2 seconds. I'll explain to me. Try to make you feel better.
I mean, this is terrifying.
Very simply, if somebody was paying you,
right?
The company we work for, just asking that question,
right?
If somebody was, they would just be willing to possibly offer you money to know who and see what's going on.
Well, they're paying me $1 million. Will you guys give me $2 million? I'm joking, but seriously, this is very odd. You guys came to my house. It makes me feel slightly good that maybe I'm getting some notoriety for this, but this is crazy.
So again, I'll tell you why.
Okay.
So apparently there's tons of things influencing going around.
Okay.
A huge percentage of it is all bots. Not
bots?
real.
Interesting. No, I'm real.
It's Russia.
Anything I report on about Diddy is coming from what other influencers, what news articles, and I'm a comedian. I put my spin on it, but nobody is paying me to do that.
I've seen it and I like it.
Yeah, thank you.
It's very simple that if it was the fact that somebody was paying you,
right?
People who are getting some negative, talk,
would be interested
in finding that out and possibly going action either against that person,
right?
Or
am I at any danger for doing this?
Zero. The only time you'd ever have any liability is if you said, "I know for a fact this person raped it."
No, no. All of I'm satire. I'm a comedian.
And you say allegedly.
I always say, wow. I'm shocked that this is. I've never had fans come visit me. I'm just filming you guys because this freaked me out.
I'll tell you why. Because everything you do is real. And so many things are just bots.
Right.
So we got a list of about 15 people.
Interesting.
That only post themselves.
Wow.
And we're just trying to find out if people are paying for the story to be
pushed. Got it.
Listen, everybody talks about it.
Okay.
I'm not an influencer whatsoever.
Right.
Guess what? Me and my friends talk about it once in a while.
Right.
Oh, you got
right, and I understand. I'm not looking to spread misinformation, and TikTok docks you very quickly. If I've had videos of like, oh, that sounds threatening or this and that, but well, can I get your guys' information just so if I have something that comes up, I can contact you guys?
So to be honest,
no,
we can't give out a company because
okay.
they don't want to be linked to anybody.
Got it.
My name is Robert James.
Okay, Robert.
Peter Deegan.
Okay, cool. This is crazy.
Agreed. And again, we were going to sit out here.
No, that's fine. Yeah, it's my cat Crunchy. I hope my wife is impressed. I mean, I just hope I was like, I'm trying to be a successful comedian. I would love, but it is freaky that you guys like come to my back door. This is kind of crazy.
The back door?
I mean, I know, but even on my house, even though you guys were able to just find me is crazy. I mean, I guess it's not.
Well, just Google anybody's name.
I guess I just didn't expect anybody was looking for me at all. So.
No, that's all. So
okay.
So apparently doing something right because you're getting at least.
Yeah, because you guys are visiting me. I wish you were two hot ladies visiting me. No, you guys are pretty yourselves.
I apologize.
Okay, well, thank you guys very much for. Is that it?
No, that's all.
All right.
If you're like so and so's paying me.
Oh, right.
Money, we can talk.
No, and I'm also too. I'm a truth seeker, so I couldn't be paid off to have somebody having me. You know, it depends how much money, I guess, my wife, you know.
To be honest,
yeah.
The last few we've talked to,
everybody's
just doing what they want. It's they do it because they love it. They
enjoy
it.
And honestly, it's getting people to pay attention. So on TikTok, if people are paying attention, if I'm doing I did a no Diddy music video. Nobody cared about that. But if I get on and talk about something.
You're not bad.
Hey, thank you. Yeah.
Wants this jelly,
yeah. Thank you.
It's not bad.
Yeah. Well, okay. I appreciate you guys coming by. This is odd, but maybe I'm on to something.
Again,
okay.
If you are getting paid, then
yeah.
maybe
we just want to know by who, and if it was
interesting.
Our client,
interesting.
They would look to pay for you.
Okay.
That's all.
Interesting.
Very simple.
Well, contact me again if there's some real money to be made because I need to make it. So, all right. Well, thank you guys. This is crazy. Take care. No, it's okay. It's okay.
And they probably must have been researching him and looking into him and looking into all kinds of stuff. All right, let's check for the updates. That was an interesting video. What in the heck? Okay, so we got a few updates. Not many, but a few. So the judge says, what if an individual had counsel paid by another? What if an individual had counsel paid by another? Prosecution says the payment not privileged. And if it's about paying off a witness, that is what we're investigating. Those notes refer to individual 2, a non-lawyer third party. It's on his to-do list. The judge says a defense lawyer can investigate potential witnesses. It would be malpractice not to. If these are about the defense team's preparation for witnesses, isn't it a closer call if it falls into work product? Prosecution says the person is tasked as a non-lawyer. Prosecution says on October 18th, the defendant told a family member to work with a non-lawyer to find everything about victim number 2. And this non-lawyer individual, number 2, is not identified as part of the defense team. Judge says, what about turning over the surveillance video? Prosecution says we're opposed. There's no authority for that. The judge says, I noticed that. Mr. Agnifilo, they want to work with you to try to resolve this. Agnifilo starts laughing. The judge says, you may not agree, but why not discuss? Agnifilo says, we don't want to give them insight. Oh, man.
Have live reporting. Speaking of which, our very own Elizabeth Milner is going to be coming out of that courtroom. She's in that courtroom right now. She's going to be coming out and giving us a live report about what she observed in that courtroom. This is a live shot about what's happening outside the courthouse. But let me tell you a little bit more about this.
Another update. Combs' lawyer Agnifilo says all the legal pads say legal. What the government is saying was searched is just not accurate. Judge says, wait, you're saying the photos taken from the pads marked legal were marked legal? Can you show me? Agnifilo walks up and hands the judge a pad. Okay. Does that mean if it says legal, then it's legal?
ties into the prosecution's argument that Sean Combs should be denied bail. That there's going to be a hearing on that on Friday. One of the accusations is that even behind bars, he has been trying to influence witnesses. He has been improperly communicating with people. He has been having family members and others doing his bidding to influence the case. So moving on, the judge said a defense lawyer can investigate potential witnesses.
He's reading what we just read. So let me get to the new update. Combs' lawyer, Agnifilo, says, when we visit him in jail, we have lists. Everything in these pads are things we discuss. Trial strategy, who we should speak to undermine a witness's credibility. We discuss everything with Mr. Combs. This is a sweeping racketing case. What sweeping racketing case? Okay. Oh, man. Got another update. Combs' lawyer Agnifilo says, we're studying this man's life for our bail application, his charity work. This is not a single event case. We spend time on every nook and cranny of his man's life. I have a case, Buffino SP441F3D, very important case. Okay.
Ads are things we discuss. Trial strategy, who we should speak to undermine a witness's credibility. We discuss everything with Mr. Combs. This is a sweeping racketeering case. I want to bring back in criminal defense attorney Safa Robinson-Frere. She was kind enough to stay with us. And we're also joined by criminal defense attorney Natalie Whittingham-Burrell. Great to have you both here. Natalie, I'll start with you. As you heard a little bit about the updates here, what do you make of this? Did the government engage in wrongdoing?
So I think I would personally...
Natalie, I can't hear you. I don't know if we're working on the audio. I don't know if you're muted. I'm trying to work it.
Not muted.
There we go. There you go. Hey, now
okay.
Natalie.
Well, I am of the opinion that I would need to see the work product itself, or the materials to see. But certainly here, the prosecution did not take, I think, the necessary steps to safeguard attorney work product communication information, because even if they've given it to this so-called clean team, they have seen it. The police have seen it. And so there is a possibility here that they did violate his right to attorney-client communication and privilege. It's very, very possible, depending on what was in those materials. And things that are marked attorney-client, work product are clearly attorney-client work product, and they should not be looking at it.
And Natalie, let me follow up with that, because Mark Agnifilo just said, we are studying this man's life for our bail application, his charity work. This is not a single day, a single event case. We spend time on every nook and cranny of this man's life. So it seems to me they're saying, you should consider, government, everything that's in his jail cell as part of his criminal case. You don't have a right to see it. Am I understanding that correctly, Natalie?
That might be what they're saying, but it's a bit more restrained than that as far as the federal rules are concerned. And yes, for the bail application, his life is very important. However, conversations with third parties, with individuals that are not a part of the defense team, do not fall under attorney-client work product, nor is it necessarily attorney-client work product. Not that the prosecution is alleging this, but for the attorney to assist the defendant in committing some type of crime. If they could allege that, Sean P. Diddy Combs is trying to obstruct justice and he's using his attorney's communication in order to do that, that's no longer privileged communication, because we cannot participate as attorneys in criminal activity. But let's say that that's not what the material is, and it goes to his case, then yes, that is privileged material, and they have no business looking at it in any regard. They have no right to look at it.
Safa, another update from court. Combs' attorney said, Mr. Combs comes out and reads us his to-do list. That is privileged. The 19 pages include things we have said to him. These are the notes that were allegedly taken by the government. The name of a potential witness, a retired doctor, now they have that. This is the heart of attorney-client. Safa.
Absolutely, and I agree with them. And to my point I said earlier was, at the end of the day, who is in the best position to determine what is attorney-client privilege or what is attorney-client work product? The prosecution isn't. It's up to the defense to say, these are our witnesses, these are the avenues that we are exploring, and that's up to us for our defense case. So the prosecution isn't in the position to tell us or to tell his defense team what is privileged and what is not. And if anything, have the hearing on the issue and let the judge make the determination.
It's interesting because, Natalie, and by the way, if anybody has any questions about this hearing, has questions about the overall case, submit them on YouTube. We'll answer them for you on air. Natalie, it seems the defense is saying, particularly when it comes to this search of the Metropolitan Detention Center where Combs is being housed, that this sweep, this raid that was pre-planned and it was looking for contraband, and they found homemade weapons, they found drugs, they found, all these different things, electronic devices. It seems what the defense is suggesting, and this is a pretext to really search what was in Sean Combs' jail cell. You think that's a little of an extreme position?
It's not extreme at all. I think it actually is a pretext to search his jail cell because there was allegations before he was incarcerated that he was tampering with witnesses. Of course, they're going to look and go see whether or not he's still tampering with witnesses. That's not far afield to me at all. What ultimately matters, though, is that it doesn't matter if it's a pretext, because no person incarcerated has a Fourth Amendment right to privacy that you would have in your own home. You just don't have that right. However, the attorney-client privilege communication, that is sacrosanct and that is protected. Right. So if they use this pretext in order to get into attorney-client communications purposefully and did not take the necessary safeguards, then they've committed a massive ethical violation. But as far as whether or not they need a reason, there doesn't need to be a pretext, because they don't need a reason to search his cell because he has no expectation of privacy in his cell.
Interesting. So, Safa, let me go to you with this. We have a question from Benoit on YouTube. I'm wrestling with this as well as what we can expect by the end of the day. But the question is from Benoit on YouTube, is it possible the judge makes a move today with this situation? It's kind of like I'm debating with it because it seems like the judge and the defense are saying we need more information. It also seems like he's saying, defense counsel, can't you work with the prosecution on this? Do you think we're going to get a decision on this today?
We may not get a decision on this today. The judge at this point in time is exploring, what actually happened, what remedies are available to him to rectify this situation. And so we could get a decision today. He may reserve on that decision. We just don't know it.
And what would that decision be?
Whether or not what's included in those documents is a breach of that attorney-client privilege and relationship. And if so, what sanctions will the judge impose?
And that leads me to the next question we have, Natalie. This is from Kwang Lee on YouTube. There's absolutely no way Diddy gets a dismissal due to this screw up, right?
Prepare yourself, guys. So it just depends on the facts of the case. And the court will likely do a good faith analysis, meaning, was the prosecution intentionally attempting to intercept attorney-client privilege communications, or were they genuinely looking for contraband and just happened to come across these things, right? Or were they just doing a search, hoping to find evidence of witness tampering and not anticipating finding so much attorney-client communications? But I want to be extremely clear here. Dismissal of a case for interception and misuse of attorney-client privilege communications is a rare remedy, but it is an available remedy. It can happen. Not saying it's going to happen here, but I'm saying that this is extremely serious, needs to be investigated further, and that is a potential thing that could happen, that the case gets dismissed.
Can I ask you about that? You mean a case could get dismissed where the judge says, prosecution, I can't believe you did this. You tainted this entire case. It shows what you're about. Dismissed. Almost, by the way, like happened with the Alec Baldwin case. But is it that, or is it another in the examples that you've seen in the past, where because of an attorney-client breach, or because of a violation of a defendant's constitutional rights, a key piece of evidence can no longer.
So, Mr. Combs's lawyer, Agnifilo, he comes out and reads us his to-do list that is privileged. The 19 pages include things we have said to him, the name of potential witnesses, a retired doctor. Now they have that. This is in the heartland of attorney-client. Combs's attorney, Agnifilo, says Mr. Combs comes out and reads us his to-do list that is privileged. The 19 pages include things we have said to him, the name of potential witnesses, retired doctor. Now they have that. Oh, I just read that. What the fuck? Oh, he typed it twice. Okay, I was like, damn, I'm tripping. He posted the same thing twice. Okay. And then the judge says, I'm looking at the case you cited, Miss Slavic. Are you familiar with that? And the prosecution says, I'm not, Your Honor. Agnifilo says, Miss Garagos has something to say. Tenny Garagos says, they say there's a covert grand jury investigation, but there's the current indictment. Prosecution says we're talking here about 11 pages of notes, not a stack. None of those notes are legal. The judge says the notes themselves are not legal, but that page was in a legal pad that was marked legal. The prosecution says it's not clear when the defendant wrote on that. Slipping and sliding.
Daddy, I like when you scrambling and scraping for shit. No, I like that.
Says, I'm looking at the case you cited, Ms. Slavic. This is the prosecutor.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with it? AUSA Slavic says, I'm not, Your Honor. And then Sean Combs' lawyer, Mark Agnifilo, says, Ms. Garagos has something to say. That's another one of Sean Combs' attorneys. And then Tenny Garagos says, they say there's a covert grand jury investigation, but there's the current indictment. From there, prosecutor says,
Julie,
we're talking here about 11 pages of notes, not a stack. None of those notes are legal. The judge says the notes themselves are not legal, but that page was in a legal pad that was marked legal. The prosecutor says it's not clear when defendant wrote that on. What do you take away from that, Saba?
It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, these notes were located on a legal pad, not a regular notebook, but a legal pad. Shit. And I believe it was located inside of a folder that was also marked.
I'm about to start ordering some legal pads from Amazon. Yeah, all this shit is attorney-client. I want to order all that shit.
How they even got to those additional
my text
pages.
Messages. I want to have my text messages with a legal pad background.
It's clearly something that could be work product, attorney-client product, or communication. Right. And are you just going to dismiss the first page and then go to the next ones and assume that it's not? You know,
Gypsy, thank you. Thank you for the 27 months.
You can. I want to read you a question from one of our viewers, Natalie. It's from Dougie Jones on YouTube. What is more important, the crimes Diddy is accused of, or taking pictures of pieces of paper?
What is more important is everyone's constitutional rights. So the thing that I tell everyone is that your constitutional rights were built on the back of bad guys. Miranda was someone who confessed to a crime, right? He did it. He confessed to it. But we all now have Miranda rights because he wasn't properly advised that he didn't have to under the 6th and the 5th Amendment, right? We have the right to walk away from police officers when they stop us and frisk us. We don't have to stay there and be stopped and frisked. You have Terry to thank for that. Your right to have an attorney free of charge if you can't afford one. You can thank Mr. Gideon for that. He was a bad guy. He was convicted of crimes. Sean P. Diddy Combs might be an allegedly bad guy, but if you don't uphold everyone's right to counsel off of the back of these bad people, you don't get your rights. So later on, if you are alleged to have done something that you didn't actually do, and then the police or the state is able to go in and look at your letters back and forth to your attorney and use them against you, then you would have lost your rights because of a case like this. That's why this is more important than that.
Okay. Very, very well said. And let me just add one more thing, particularly in high-profile cases, particularly where you have defendants who are accused of egregious conduct. I will say it becomes, I mean, it's important in every case, but for those who believe that he's automatically guilty, for those who believe it's just we have to go through the pro forma of a trial, the last thing that you want is a criminal defendant's rights to be violated in some way pre-trial because, and correct me if I'm wrong, what could happen is they get convicted. They have grounds for appeal. This conviction gets overturned. You got to start the whole process again. It's not even necessary you have a second trial. It won't be as strong as the first time around. So anybody who really wants justice in this case, who already thinks that Sean Combs is guilty, just keep that in mind. Now, I want to actually go to you, Natalie. One more thing. We have an update from court. This looks like we have now a timetable.
Yeah.
So the judge says we have a bail hearing on Friday at which I will not consider these materials. In terms of running down the privilege issues, that can take weeks. Any issue with that time frame? Sean Combs' lawyer says no. The judge says I'll issue a schedule. Sean Combs' lawyer says if they are intending to seek a superseding indictment with these notes, the judge asks the prosecutor, and the prosecutor says, just to be clear, the filter team can keep the notes. The judge says if they're not involved in the grand jury investigation or this case. Multiple points there, Natalie. You talk about what you want to hit first.
Yeah, so first of all, off the bat, I can't tell the judge's tone of voice, but immediately there's a sanction on the prosecution. And that is the prosecution is seeking to oppose Sean P. Diddy Combs' release from jail because of alleged witness tampering. However, they got to that witness tampering by intercepting attorney-client privilege, and so they cannot use it. So that is basically a ruling that, at least for that bit of information, it's a possibility that that was attorney-client privilege. They didn't take the necessary safeguards, and now they can't use it. Doesn't mean Diddy's going to get released, but it means it's a lot better for the defense that they cannot use that. We also now know that there is a potential for a superseding indictment, likely adding on charges of obstruction of justice. But if it's found that that indictment was generated as a result of the violation of attorney-client privilege and work product, then more than likely that indictment is not going to stand. They might have killed their own case by the way in which they gathered this evidence. So those are the things that pop up in my mind.
Saf, I'll give you an opportunity to respond if you agree with Natalie, but also throw this out. We have a question from Tiffany Marcinak on YouTube. If not a dismissal, which doesn't seem to be what the case is, I wonder if this is used to grant him bail. So again, the question is, how does this affect Friday?
Just says not going to take into account.
Definitely. So I 1000% agree with Natalie to answer your question first and foremost. To the issue of bail, I don't think that these things are going to be considered for bail. And in fact, it appears that the prosecution tried to use some of this information in opposition to Mr. Combs' bail application, but the judge seems to be striking certain parts from that opposition, or is not going to consider those parts of that, of those documents or whatever they might be for the bail application.
Big update from court. Okay, so this is interesting. First, the judge says, Sean Combs' lawyer says they should preserve the video. The prosecution says fine. This is the part I want to address. So, Natalie, the judge says, what about the Jeffries case in Eastern District of New York? Talking about Mike Jeffries, who was arrested on sex trafficking. The judge says the government released him on a $10 million bail. This is in the Eastern District of New York. Be prepared to address the difference there, and the prosecutor says it's very different. That was one of the arguments, Natalie, that Sean Combs' defense team raised. Another high-profile individual. Why does he get $10 million bail and my client doesn't? Wow, right. The fact that the judge might be entertaining that.
Maybe Diddy got a chance.
I think that's very interesting. I don't know with the Jeffries case if there's any allegation of witness tampering. We know that before this raid and the interception of attorney-client work product privilege, the prosecution had already raised that Sean P. Diddy Combs was reaching out to witnesses, but that was a bit more ephemeral. They couldn't exactly say what he was saying to these witnesses, and he had not yet been indicted. And now with the judge saying he's not going to consider the new information, they are going to have to distinguish him from the other case. Why is that important? Because it's important to have fairness across the board, right? So similarly situated defendants charged with the same thing should have similar bail and release conditions. There shouldn't be differences if they're pretty much the same. So that's very interesting. And I'm thinking it's going to rise and fall on the previous allegations that were made of witness tampering.
So I want to let everybody know that the hearing is over. The judge is now going to see both parties on Friday for that bail hearing. We plan to cover it here on Law and Crime the very same way, but I don't want anybody to go anywhere because we're waiting for Elizabeth Milner to come out of that courthouse, give us an update about what she observed inside that courtroom, including what she observed of Sean Combs. Did he make any statements? Did he say anything? Did he look in a certain direction? Because something's still probably going on in that courtroom. Maybe he said something or motioned something to his family. It'll be interesting to hear. And also things that weren't picked up during the course of these live updates. But what's also interesting is I don't think we're going to hear any press statements, Safa, right? I don't think we're going to hear anything from the prosecutors or the defense because there's a gag order in place, right? There's only so much that they can say. I mean, it's about not disclosing certain information about the case. It's not about, they also can't reveal grand jury material. Do you anticipate we're going to hear any pressers after this?
I don't think so. And if anything, I don't think that we're going to hear from the prosecution. And I think it's best at this point for them to keep quiet, considering the tire fire that's been created and why we're even having this discussion today. That's number one. Number two, if we hear a statement from Mr. Agnifilo, that is a possibility. But right now, I think it's best that everybody just sort of takes a pause and kind of keeps quiet, especially with the defense. They could be looking at a huge one for their case, and they don't want to say anything or do anything that could potentially jeopardize what's going to come down this coming Friday or in the future for their case.
Got some questions as we wait for Elizabeth to come out. The question from Cole on YouTube. Why did the judge consider the Jeffries case before? I guess it's why didn't the judge consider the Jeffries case before? I would say the timing of it, because Sean Combs had already been denied bail twice. Then Jeffries gets arrested and charged, and this issue hasn't become before a court yet. There was Sean Combs' team was actually appealing this to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, paused that in order to now argue this in front of the most recent judge overseeing this case, Judge Arun Subramanian. So again, he seems to be the first judge to handle this issue and has already commented on it. All right, so I have a question for you, Natalie. This is from Bright Essen on YouTube. So because it seems like he got a relatively early trial date, does that mean his case will be resolved much more quickly than usual court cases of this magnitude, or will it take years and years?
It will take years and years, but I'm doubtful given we're just in the pretrial release stage. We haven't even gotten to motions, right? I doubt this case will be tried on the currently set trial date, hopefully not years and years, but these prosecutions do take a long time.
May of 2025, which is an interesting argument, Safa, because in the prosecution's most recent...
All right, so they're done for today. We'll definitely be back on Friday for that. Oh, damn, Friday. I should be able to have a birthday thing to go to, but it's usually earlier in the day, so it should be fine. Diddy. This is a conversation. Suge Knight conversation? Let me see.
But a lot of stuff we all been knowing is true. But he the fall guy right now. There's not one celebrity that he hung with is speaking up for him. Snoop and Puffy was so closer than most.
Really?
They would do things together and party together and do things that it was uncomfortable for two men to be that way. Clark and Trey, Russell Simmons,
You think
everybody knew what Puffy did. This the big question is this. It's not one person didn't know that Puffy was Usher. It's not one person didn't know what the saddest thing in the world is what they did to Justin Bieber.
What was that?
That's bad.
What'd they do to him? Because there's a lot of speculation out there, but nobody. I mean, I've heard things, but what did they really do to him?
They had sex with him
when he was a kid.
I hate to say that. I hate to say that because I really like Justin Bieber. I feel bad for Justin Bieber, and this is when it happened. If Justin Bieber came from a wealthy family, Justin Bieber pretty much came from a poor family, but the young man was so talented, and he could have been bigger than Michael Jackson. But the depression of the drugs and the stuff they allowed these grown men to do to this little boy is unhealthy and it's fucked up. No grown men supposed to be getting high and doing drugs and drinking with a kid.
Hey, Suge, Justin Bieber has been getting this out in different ways. You could see it in his music and just what he's been trying to say without saying it. So, I mean, I think everybody knows what you just stated to be true.
I mean, you had grown men would take Justin Bieber. A grown man take Justin Bieber when he was young, to a vacation, a romantic vacation, showing pictures on the Instagram with no women, nobody else but a grown, successful man and this little kid. And even if you and I was going on vacation together, and because if the wives mad or not, it's definitely not going to be me and you. It's going to be mad because we're going to have some there. Or I'm not going to be sitting on a romantic island, just you and me.
Hell
you
no.
know what I mean?
Hell no.
I'd rather take the chance. I'd rather take the chance of my girl saying, hey, you know, you up there having parties and all. You right. She damn sure ain't going to say this. You and I on a romantic island. That's us.
Hell no.
When they took Justin Bieber and then still, that only is a bad look. It's sad.
Yeah.
But the worst part about it is, everybody said what was done to Usher, and they done to Justin Bieber. And the thing with Usher spent the night and Prima Puppy being in the same bed to do an album. They never did one song they put out at that time. On top of that, when I met Usher, I came on one time. I'm speaking to the guy because he got good songs. That's out of respect. Young black man. This dude rolled his eyes at me. And so there was somebody came over and kept saying, you know, don't have one of your guys do nothing to him. He a good young man, but him and Puffy got a thing. He had a thing. He said, he gave me a look like, you know. And I thought about it. The way he rolled his eyes at me, it wasn't like somebody homie rolled it. It was like I beat up somebody's man. Like I beat his, you know, he did, like somebody to roll their eyes. Like you beat my boyfriend up. I ain't speaking to you.
Really?
It was one of those, right? Yeah, for sure. And the crazy thing about it is like Leslie, his mother, and everybody else said the same thing. Well, it was wrong, but if we go and get Puffy in trouble behind that, Usher wouldn't be Usher. He'd be known as the guy who got molested by Puffy, and they didn't want that. They wanted the money.
Damn. Suge Knight from prison.
So egregious on the prosecution's part that I'm going to grant Mr. Combs bail because I want to safeguard his rights and ensure that he can prepare his case with the integrity of his attorneys. Then I'm going to grant that and I'm going to allow it.
All right. Tell you what we're going to do. Safa, we're going to sign you off. You've been so generous with your time. Natalie, stick with us. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're hoping to get Elizabeth Milner on, who is inside that courtroom. She'll give her perspective, her observations about what happened there. Stay with us. We'll be right back right after this.
Ray just sent me this link. Let's see. On Twitter. I don't know if this is real or not. Diddy speaking on the phone from prison in an almost indecipherable code. What could he be talking about? Khmer, where are the aliens coming? It's nearly time, don't you think? 2.5 million views.
What up? Yo, listen. Do not entertain none of this nonsense and nothing over the phone. I'm gonna need you to get rid of all the leftover pizza boxes.
The what? Is this made up?
Boxes left over from the pizza. All the boxes. Okay. Make sure you recycle the plastic like we talked about. Yeah.
Bro.
A horrifying report revealing sex trafficking of minors is quickly becoming the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the United States. And with open border policies fueling the crisis, government agencies cannot keep up. Brooke Taylor is live in Dallas with more. Good morning, Brooke.
Dana, good morning. A local nonprofit here in Dallas is working with law enforcement to take down these sex trafficking rings. We spoke to the president of this foundation, who tells me that the reality of the situation is that ordering sex trafficking victims is just as simple as ordering pizza. The president of the Shepherd's Watch Foundation says that you could order a sex trafficking victim as fast as 15 minutes. There's ads on social media and even gaming platforms that look exactly like this. You could select what age, height, and other really disturbing factors. She says the underage victims will usually have emojis covering their faces, and many are branded with tattoos.
There's been a huge paradigm shift, especially in the sex ads. We're seeing up to 90% are mainly migrants, where we used to work domestic cases.
And just last week, Texas DPS found a massive group of 57 unaccompanied children. Once they're processed, many are falling through the cracks and then get literally lost, becoming vulnerable to traffickers. According to a recent audit from the Office of Inspector General, over the past 4 fiscal years, 32,000 unaccompanied children failed to appear for their immigration hearings. As of May of this year, ICE also didn't serve notices to appear on more than 291,000 unaccompanied minors. The Homeland Security Investigation's Dallas office tells Fox that sex trafficking is a bigger issue than many realize and impacts many different cities across our country.
It can happen in schools. It can happen in neighborhoods. It's not just any one specific area that you can pinpoint it to, unfortunately. It's an epidemic, unfortunately, in society.
And again, authorities tell us that this is not just a Texas issue. These traffickers will move the victims throughout the country, targeting different cities, big cities, small and rural areas.
Crazy. All right, guys, I'm going to get off for now. If things pop off tonight, we'll see. It's been kind of busy. It's been a little busy the last 2 days. You know, I was like, let me ease myself in and come back, and boom, it's been pretty busy. I don't have notifications for now, but I will in 3 hours. Subscribe to my other pages too. I don't know. Let me see if this works. Subscribe to my, well, especially the Chase channel. I haven't been really on there lately, but I am gonna jump on there when there's no notifications and other whatever random stuff to cover. See if that thing, it does work. Okay. All right, but you guys have a good day. Take care. Be safe. Peace. Bye. Adios. Thank you for joining me, hanging out with me. And the Diddy thing we'll cover back on Friday. I don't know what time. I'm really curious about the bail. That's gonna be a big deal. This is I don't know if this is the third time or the second time. I thought